Part 17, November 1976. In History of Magic after lunch. Continued in Potions after History of Magic.
All right, mates. Guess whose birthday it is in 2 days? I'll give you a hint. Mine. What's the plan?
Plan? What plan? Is there supposed to be a plan? What's all this talk of birthdays? Ha! Ha!
Not funny. I want a party. I didn't get one last year.
This is because we do not love you. It is tragic.
Also, you were just disowned, right? I don't think you were feeling very party-y.
Thanks, Pete. I'd forgotten that charming incident. Not the point. Sirius Black's very sexy and exciting party for his 18th birthday is coming up and I need ideas. Otherwise, you lot are so not invited.
No one is jumping out of a cake naked for you, by the by.
You are no fun.
That would be expensive. Cake jumping.
You could hire someone cheap, like Potter.
No cake at all, mate.
But you would be ever so alluring all covered in icing. Maybe you'd make Evans love you again. No fun, Potter.
Myself in icing is not for the consumption of the general public.
The general public wishes to thank you.
I am heartbroken. All right. If you're going to be bad friends, I will make it simple. I've made a list of the supplies and you can go pick them up.
How very thoughtful of you.
You arse! As if we don't have plans already. Arse.
You do? You do have plans? Oh, James, I am so happy. Come here, let me give you a kiss.
In the middle of potions? I think not. Our private clinches are better left to privacy.
You are disturbed.
What private clinches?
Don't get jealous, darling. It's unbecoming.
Yes, look how pink he is.
He's always pink.
Who's pink? I am not pink.
He's always looked, well, it's more like healthy to me.
Yes, I would have said fuchsia.
It's definitely magenta.
It's definitely I hate you all.
Has anyone noticed that we are not talking about me anymore? Problem. So, what are these plans?
They're surprises.
I don't like surprises unless it involves James and a cake.
We'll see.
Traitor!
Remus has learned long ago that Marauder birthdays are not like other birthdays. This important lesson was brought home to him when Sirius shoved him, face first, into his first Marauder birthday cake, which was coincidentally not a real cake, but rather a pan full of melted chocolate with icing on top of it. This is the way a Marauder has to learn how to say happy birthday. It always makes Remus feel squeamish, even after 7 years of practice. He simply doesn't like shoving people's faces into anything, so James often charges him with procuring the refreshments and putting up the decorations. Well, Remus is bad at putting up the decorations. He has no eye for it, and often gets tangled in streamers, which results in a lot of torn crepe paper and an incredibly bad mood. "Remus," James says to him, finally, earlier that afternoon, "we are 7th-year Gryffindor males. We have no need of crepe." "Thank God," Remus replied, and went off to get the fire whiskey. It is, he supposes, some sort of reaffirming action, showing that he isn't all prefect all the way down. To begin with, he can drink any one of his friends and probably any one of his teachers under the table, even though he doesn't much like the taste of fire whiskey. He supposes it's his metabolism, which does odd things he isn't sure of. The first time he realized this was with Sirius, who stopped speaking to him for weeks afterwards, with a parting, "Honestly, Moony, keeping this from us for all this time?" and an agreeable, "Not on," from James. "Do we have music?" James yells from the common room. "What's the music?" "I don't know," Remus yells back, tearing through his trunk. "All my music's too pretty. Shall we just take his?" "Right-o," comes James's voice a moment later in a strangled grunt. "Just, pick that up while you're up there, eh?" Remus straightens. His arms are full of clanking bottles of fire whiskey. It'll take another 2 trips to bring all of it down, not to mention the two enormous tankards of rum and the frightening pepper-infused vodka that he brought back from Lithuania, and which everyone is too afraid to try. If he tries loading up his arms with Sirius's enormous, dog-eared collection of punk records, both wizarding and muggle, he will probably fall down the stairs and spill all the alcohol, which, though an excellent way to christen a ship, is not the way of a marauder birthday party. Well, he thinks sympathetically, James must be extremely busy, because he'd certainly come upstairs and help him if he weren't extremely busy. When he steps down the last stair to the common room, James is, in fact, on the floor, ankles and one wrist tangled in crepe paper, and a look of bewildered disgust on his face. "Crepe paper," he mutters, not looking Remus in the eye. "I couldn't let well enough alone. Tricky." "I know," Remus replies. "It gets you where you're weakest, and then there's no hope." Kindly he helps James untangle himself, though he eyes the crepe paper warily all the while. He doesn't know of what exactly it's capable. Don't know what sadist invented it. Someone with fingers I don't trust. Shall we just magic it up? "I love wands," James says, tugging his from his back pocket. "Do you know, it's a wonder muggles aren't stumbling about with underwear on their heads all the time, not knowing right from left." "Oh, impressive," Remus says dryly. "Those muggles, and they've managed for so long." Wands flicking in unison, they get the trailing curls, somewhat knotted but still passable, of crepe paper into the air and thrown here and there over the rafters. They're boys, Remus supposes, so it doesn't have to be symmetrical, though the utter carelessness of some of the crisscrosses still make him cringe. "It'll do," he says finally, stepping back and brushing hair out of his eyes. "Well, it'll have to, as I've no idea how to get it down and start all over." "Come on," James says, though dubiously. "It's not all that bad." "Hello," Peter says, coming in with Remus's Victrola. "Did all the crepe paper in the world come here to die?" "It will be this way for all time," James mutters defensively, "as a reminder of our great triumph over the paper that is crepe." "I wouldn't really call it a triumph," Peter says hesitantly. "He's right, you know. It's really more of a Pyrrhic victory." "I think everyone who sees this room loses," Peter adds. "How about we get them too drunk to notice?" James suggests. "Good God, Mooney, that's a lot of fire whiskey. What are we doing for people who like their drinks less painful?" "I've got some muggle stuff from my sisters upstairs," Peter volunteers. "Pads was a bartender, right? He can make it taste good." "We don't want him stuck behind a bar all night," James objects with, Remus thinks appreciatively, uncharacteristic consideration. "He'll have to test all his creations, and we'll find him with his head in a toilet a week later. We'll just make some kind of punch. It can't be that hard, right? We'll get juice. Peter, did you make that banner?" "I started it," Peter says doubtfully. "I can't really draw portraits, though. I don't know how it's going to turn out." "And I have the camera," Remus says. "You know, for pictures, to document the chaos." He attempts a shifty look. "Remus, have you got something in your eye?" Peter asks. "Like lint. Do you need any help with it?" "No," Remus mutters. "I was trying to imply I will blackmail you all and move to a sunny Caribbean isle with the hush money, whereupon I will be fed chocolate all day by the buxom natives." James stares at him. "You make even that sound stodgy," he says. "Good job, mate. Really, it's impressive." "Mooney!" Sirius howls. "Where is Mooney? I want to commend him for this excellent Latvian purchase of his. Such foresight, such intuition, such Mooney!" Remus, however, is in hiding. This is, after all, a party, and a rather good one at that, with Peter's banner hung high above the goings-on where, James whispered, no one would be able to see it. It was supposed to be of them, all 4 of them. But looks, Remus thinks, like a very large pen vomited on a very large piece of parchment and then tortured into spasms of despair and agony for a very long time. With faces. There are definitely faces. The one with the 3 splashes of ink across and a giant blob in the center is Remus guesses. And the one with uneven circles somewhere amidst a mess of black is James. Peter hasn't given himself any hair. Sirius is the one that's left, looking wild and squinty and definitely lopsided. There is a certain something compelling about it. Sad, mournful little characters that somewhere hit home. We are none of us artists, James had told Peter earlier. You are a brave, good man. Pepper! Sirius is yelling now. It's pepper and alcohol together. Genius. Northern Europe. Hey, hello, where'd you come from? What's your name? Ashley. Whoa, okay then. Hey, comes a call, and all of a sudden the door of the closet jerks open. Remus looks up guiltily to see James staring fuzzily down at him, swaying slightly. What are you doing in here? Come on. What the hell? Reading in a closet? It's a party. It's Sirius's party. Come up. You've missed him doing the sexy dance on the table. Ugh, Remus protests. Look, James, I know it's a party, and I'm really glad you're all having a good time, but I've got loads of reading to do, and you know me. This isn't really my parties, you know? Up, James insists mercilessly, and jerks him upright, dragging him out of the closet. There aren't actually as many people as there had been when Remus had first crept up into the closet to hide. There is, apparently, a Ravenclaw girl named Ashley, and Frank, and Kingsley with his arms folded across his chest, downing fire whiskey after fire whiskey without batting an eye, and someone asleep face down on the floor who looks from behind like a 5th year Remus only recognizes by hairstyle. Peter is eyeing his own fire whiskey nervously, and Sirius is the life of the small, dwindling party. Evan's left, James confides in Remus's ear, much louder than he probably intends. I feel horrible. I was so drunk. So drunk. All I could say to her was, I'm sorry I'm so drunk. Sorry, I said, but she was so nice. She's the best girl. I forgot the entire conversation we were having while we were still having it. I'm sure it will be fine, Remus says, eyeing Frank nervously. An encore, James demands, apparently having lost interest in the ever-present Evans problem. An encore of Sirius Black's specialty, the sexy dance. Up with you, mate, onto the table. Where's your lampshade hat? Remus Lupin hates parties. He hates the drunk, happy drunks and sad drunks alike, but for different reasons. And he hates knowing at some point some Gryffindor is going to take a piss on something important. Maybe, in fact, it has already happened, and only he will be sober enough to clean it up. He can't wait for the smaller, the faint, dim hours just before sunup, when it's only the 4 of them left in the aftermath exchanging cards and presents like decent, respectable Englishmen, not bloody wild Gryffindor hooligans. Hooligans, Remus' mind repeats. Good God, he says out loud. I am a 40-year-old in a boy suit. Thanks for the daily obvious, Moony. James rolls his eyes, stepping neatly over the prostrate body of someone Remus has never seen before. Some muggles are destroying a guitar through the scratchy trumpet of the Victrola. Remus feels tired and irritated and very old. Moony! Sirius says happily, surfacing. Ashley giggles and wipes her mouth. Remus really, really hates the drunk. Sirius is wearing a pink hat with sparkly tassels. He has chocolate and crepe paper in his hair, and his face is covered in lipstick. Around 8 o'clock, he started demanding kisses for the birthday boy, and very few people had the sense or the fortitude to refuse. Even Kingsley condescended to tuck his face into Sirius's hair, an act which only he could make stately and dignified. Mooney, I wanted to thank you for the deliciously fantastic pepper vodka. I love the pepper vodka. I feel like I found a soulmate. We're going to go have pepper vodka babies named Alexei. Sturgeonovsky. Hey. This last to Ashley with a troubled look. How old are you anyway? How did you get in here? 16, Ashley says, and giggles again revoltingly. I'm Meg's cousin. 16? I think maybe that's illegal now. You know, you old pervert, James says knowledgeably, collapsing on the nearest sofa. That's illegal, Sirius informs Ashley genially, patting her consolingly on the bottom. This is possibly illegal, or not. We don't know. Terribly sorry. You're a very... This in a low voice that is really close to a growl. Very sweet girl. I don't know what to say, Remus murmurs. You should get back to your house, Sirius informs her woozily, pulling back and pointing at her meaningfully. Can't be out late. Had a wonderful evening. I could stay here, Ashley purrs. Remus hates girls who purr. No, Sirius says cheerfully. Not really. It's a Gryffindor kind of, yes, after this, so no. But happy birthday to me. I'm glad to meet you. Yes, good night. And he hustles her out the door with a rather unnecessary amount of groping. You are cruel to them, Remus says, though fondly. I am not cruel, Sirius says, shocked. Mooney, the nerve, the insinuations, and on my birthday. How am I cruel? He dusts off his hands with some relish. Well, they love you, Remus says. You have that sort of personality. And then you pat their odd, firm female bottoms and send them on their way. No doubt they pine. Oh, of course they pine, Sirius beams. That's part of the fun. You ought to try it sometime, making people pine. I wouldn't know how, Remus says airily. All right, out, out. He tosses the two prone forms on the floor, rolling them kindly to the door. Here, Kingsley says, suddenly behind him. I'll help. He leans down, taking the two by their collars and tugging them out. I will leave you alone, he adds, raising one brow in salute. You are a good man, Remus says. You are a good man, Kingsley Shacklebolt. See that Sirius has a good birthday and that he does not have any more pepper vodka, Kingsley says. Commands, really. See also that he does not vomit on himself. I will be a human shield if necessary, Remus says. The rest of the guests filter out. Remus shuts the door behind them with a neat snick, locks it, and heads to sit by Peter, who is blissfully not drunk. Remus is suddenly overwhelmed with gratitude that he's here. Thank you, Peter, he says, and Peter looks at him as if he's lost his mind. Encore, James mumbles. Encore, Sirius, old boy, old gal, encore. No more dance, Sirius says blissfully, draping himself across James's lap and kissing him wetly on the ear. No more dancing for you. He exhales hugely and flops backward, wiggling comfortably into James's open arms. I am too tired to dance. This has been a fantastically wonderful and amazing birthday. Happy birthday to me, in a light, dizzy, off-key tenor. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, dear Sirius. Happy birthday to me. Your neck smells like tequila, James informs him. Good, Sirius says. So does my mouth, see? And he huffs in James's face to prove it. Yeah, James protests, nose wriggling in disgusted horror. It's like the inside of an overcoat. Happy birthday to me, Sirius hums. Peter turns his fire whiskey bottle upside down and regards it with interest. Remus settles onto his elbows. The record has come finally to an end, and the air is filled with the empty crackling of the Victrola in the silence. How is it possible, Remus wonders, to feel so solitary amongst his 3 best friends? He is struck with the oddity of it, how different they are from one another, and how miraculous it is they ever got along in the first place, and how odd they managed to get along. Whatever glue binds them together so well cannot be classified or named or analyzed. It works without the properties of logic and common sense. Well, Remus supposes, that is friendship. That which comes from necessity or impulse or luck, but never from anything understandable. He licks his lips unconsciously. So, Sirius says brightly from his limp position on James's knee, waving a hand regally in the air and staring at the ceiling. Who's got presents for me? I burned mine in protest, Remus murmurs, too quietly for anyone to hear him. I made you the birthday banner, Peter says, pointing upwards. That one on the left, that one's you. I worked on it for hours, while James and Remus got tangled in crepe paper. I see it now, Sirius says blissfully. I'm the one with all the hair. Pete, my lad, this is the best rendition of Mooney's nose I have ever seen in my life. He turns his gaze to Remus's nose, focuses, and grins. It's an exact likeness, he exclaims. That is the best birthday present ever, Petey. That is fantastic. Who was next? Your king awaits your offerings. I have gotten you, James says, not to be outdone, a box full of many goodies. It is over there in the corner, and I cannot reach it because something is on my lap. Oh, hello, it's you. Hello. Hello, Sirius says. Here, Mooney, be a sport, would you, and fetch us James's box of many goodies? I am afraid to touch it, Remus says, but obliges. Sirius tears into the present with the same gusto he always has and always will have, for only 2 things in his life actually worth the energy: presents and puddings. James, Sirius says moments later, his face falling. James, it's a book. It's only one goodie, and it's a book. It's not just any book, James chides. Have some faith, man. Open it. Sirius opens the book. Merlin's spotted socks, James breathes. James, this is brilliant. What? Peter asks. What is it? Sirius's eyes are wider than Remus has ever seen them. They look like they've been propped open by invisible toothpicks. He flips a page and shoves the book sideways at James, grinning so wildly and with such sheer joy it looks like his face will split in 2. Look! Oh my God! Look at it! Gotten great use from that one myself, James agrees solemnly. My legs don't do that, Sirius whispers, clearly awed. I don't think my legs do that. Wow, they're really into it, aren't they? That's right, James says, apparently to the book. Keep it up. Lie back and think of England. James, Remus says uncertainly, what is it? Sirius flips through a few more pages, face glowing with delight. James, it is so incredible. It is so marvelous. Let me see it, Peter demands. Fine. Whinge, whinge, whinge. Don't let the birthday boy have his present for more than a second before you snatch it away, Sirius says irritably, dropping it into his outstretched hands. But for God's sake, do be careful and don't bend anything. Oh, James, I've never been so happy. You're the best friend a boy could ask for. Remus, with an awful feeling that he already knows what he's going to see, leans over Peter's shoulder. Whoa, Peter breathes, long and low and reverent. A wizard's Karma Sutra, Remus reads. Well, James, how mature of you. They're moving, Moony, Sirius says. It is brilliant. They are moving, Remus agrees. It is pornographic. He's not right, Sirius murmurs sadly. He's just not right. He was broken when he was little, but he's just not right. He gives Remus a disapproving look. Just turn to the first page. Tell me that doesn't make you all warm inside. Peter quickly turns the page to accommodate. Remus peers over his shoulder at the strange and foreign tangle of limbs that looks animal and desperate and somewhat comedic. Remus takes the book from Peter, ignoring Peter's pained sound, and turns the book upside down. Well, he says, I've found a head. There is a woman, he thinks, from the hips, and a man's entire rear end, and their legs are flapping wildly about. Remus ponders this, and then he begins to laugh. He's not right, Sirius repeats. He is all wrong. It's funny, Remus protests. They look like insects flipped onto their backs. Ugh, James says. I'm glad I'll forget that one in the morning. Try page 76. That one's my favorite. Remus does so, amused and feeling somewhat superior, if not somewhat disappointed. How unromantic, he thinks, stopping on the appropriate page. She's upside down, Remus says. She looks as if she's about to choke. I feel sorry for her. That is bliss, James mutters. Must you ruin all that is sacred? I want my present back, Sirius mumbles, holding out his arms. I will never part with it. I will be an apt pupil, James Potter. Hang on a tick. Don't I get another present? Remus sighs. He's never been any good with presents. He knows Sirius impossibly well. All the things that make him angry, and all the things that inexplicably make him laugh, and what sends him round the bend with gratitude. But James is good with presents, and Peter is always blithely trying, and Remus never manages to hit the mark. Remus says. I do, Sirius says softly. I know I do. Come on, give it up. I don't have it, Remus objects, flailing mentally for excuses. I've, lost it. Bollocks, Sirius says rudely. You are withholding my present. I can see it in your eyes. Pads, James reminds him. You're looking at the ceiling. I don't have to see them to know, Sirius retorts. You don't want it, Remus says desperately. I would like to concretely know I don't want it, if you please, Sirius commands, sticking out a hand. Out with it. Remus sighs and reaches behind the Victrola for the small square package, which Sirius seizes upon eagerly and rips apart with great gusto. It's another old book, he says at length. How surprising. I know, Remus says. I failed. I tried, and then I gave up. I am a failure. Feel free to steal my chocolate. I steal your chocolate anyway. Sirius gives the book a peremptory once over and then drops it unceremoniously onto the sofa. James picks it up, flips through it momentarily, and then drops it as well. It's almost a ritual. Remus spends weeks, sometimes even months in advance, desperately trying to think of something new, and yet always falls back on old, smelly book in the end, panicking at all the possibilities, much to the expectations of his friends who no longer display even any pretense of humoring his lack of imagination. Of course, it isn't his lack of imagination that does it. He imagines all sorts of presents, perfect presents, presents that would put anyone else's presents to shame. Unfortunately, most of them don't exist, and the rest of them are too expensive. I'll get extra, Remus mumbles. You can have all of it. I did try. You always do, Sirius sighs. He pats him on the back, gives his shoulder a squeeze. It's never your fault, really. One day, who knows, you'll get there. I like the stuff with the caramel in the center. Your chocolate is impure, Remus says, but noted. And that's it then, is it? Sirius flings himself backwards, sprawled with his legs and his arms wide apart on the thick carpet. Another birthday come and gone. Have we caroused, men? Have we drunk our fill? Are we absolutely full of good drink and good company? I'm tired, he concludes, and he closes his eyes. James is already snoring, and Peter, with his head on his folded arms, fell asleep when Sirius opened Remus's book. It's not that I don't try, Remus says again into the quiet, still air. I do try. Giving presents is hard, you know. I always think, this year, I'm going to make it. And then I don't. Endearing, Sirius mumbles. A bit pathetic, but that's, understandable. Keep your chin up. There's a lad. It's just books are... Well, everyone likes books, Remus presses. He toys at the frayed hem of one sweater sleeve. It's just so few people really love them, I suppose. Except James managed to find the one incredible book the whole world had to offer. People going at it like they're made of clay, Sirius says agreeably. Fantastic. Really, Remus says, I don't understand how you cannot think it's even a little funny. It is funny, you arse, Sirius says fondly. It is intensely funny, but you don't think it's anything other than funny, which is an immense face-devouring yawn. Completely ridiculous. You know what I think? I bet you Bud. What? Remus says, blinking. Is that a word? I mean, of course it is, but in this context. Yes, Sirius says solemnly. One day you will get a growth at the end of one of your fingers, and it will grow and grow, and then all of a sudden out will pop a little miniature Moony. Or maybe you'll divide, like an amoeba. You are drunk, Remus says. You are drunker than drunk. A moment ago you had a lampshade on your head. I'm saying you're the most asexual person I have ever met, Sirius explains, opening James's book and dangling it upside down. I can't imagine you doing any of this. Not that I have ever tried, but, I can't. No one could. It's like trying to hammer a square hole into a peg, So you'll probably bud. I don't plan on reproducing, Remus huffs. He is not asexual. He could tell Sirius a thing or two about nagging persistent dreams and trying very, very hard in the shower to be asexual. But he is not asexual. His organs would very much like to disagree with that misinformed assessment. I just don't show it, he adds. Just because I don't go around whipping out my respective, doesn't mean it's not all there. I didn't say it wasn't there, Sirius reasons. I just said it isn't the sort to stand up and take notice. Well, that's not true either, Remus snaps. But what have you done about it, eh? Sirius asks. Silence. This, Remus thinks, is rather uncomfortable. What can anyone say to that? Suddenly, the conversation has taken a drastic, uncomfortable, and sexual turn. Remus wasn't expecting anything of the sort. He supposes Sirius will remember none of this in the head-clutching, moan and groaning morning. But for now, Remus is very aware that one of Sirius's bleary eyes has focused on him, and that any uncomfortable shifting or turning any strange colors to alleviate the bubble of embarrassment in his belly is completely out of the question. Do you want me to write you a list? He replies irritably. Or shall I have a pantomime? Oh ho ho! Sirius says delightedly. He has a pantomime! An informative puppet show. Look, just because you don't have to get all skittery all the time. It's in the past. It never happened. Stop thinking about it. I'm not thinking about it. Can you even say the word sex without going all British? Can you? I've kissed James and he doesn't go all wonky-eyed every time we mention it. I've done shots off James's nipples. I could whisper dirty talk in James's ear all bloody night. Kiss me, you fool, he whispers throatily into James's unconscious ear. Caress me, you wild stallion. Yes, right there. James lets out a colossal snore. Sirius gives Remus a triumphant look. Remus feels slightly dazed. This has just gone in a new, equally uncomfortable direction, and Sirius is staring frankly at him, and there does not seem to be any way of safely diffusing the conversation. He doesn't want to think about it. He hasn't thought about it. For months he hasn't. Sirius keeps making it harder and harder to avoid, seeming completely unperturbed once they've decided to be completely unperturbed about it. But there are always these moments, when they relax, when they let their guard down, that it comes back to haunt them. A ghost, too frightened to disappear, or with unfinished business, lingering in the deep corners of their minds. Remus wants to cover his ears with his hands, squeeze his eyes shut, and wait until the flutter in his stomach passes. He starts, and then there is a rhythmic tap on the window, the unmistakable sound of an owl on a mission. You can go, Sirius says loftily. I don't have any lower legs. A convenient excuse, I say, Remus mumbles. Thank God for owls in the middle of the night. Morning. Whatever bloody hour it is. Remus's internal clock says somewhere in the wee hours of the morning, whatever those are. Around 3 or 4, the latest, when everything seems gray and chill and quiet. He hurries to the window, undoing the latch and stepping back from a shock of cold air in the stifling room. Not an owl, he says, as a black, sleek bird swoops into the room. Raven. When has a raven ever brought the post? Remus tries to remember. It doesn't seem familiar, this bird, glossy black streak of confidence in the air. Did you say a raven? Sirius mumbles. He rubs at one eye and sits up, swaying dizzily, before steadying himself with both hands pressed firmly against the floor. Who's it? The raven caws twice and drops a crisp letter directly in his lap. It shoots up for the rafters a moment later. Precise movements, very unlike the fluffy good cheer of a nice owl, and lurks above them, casting dark shadows over the room while it preens. For you, I think, Remus replies dryly. Sirius frowns and lurches upright, flipping the envelope over. Oh, he says suddenly, with a sharp, bitter bark of laughter. That's nice. The old seal of home. He sits up straight with a swift brusqueness that Remus would have thought was completely impossible, and makes as if to hurl it into the fire. Now, Remus says sharply, grabbing his wrist. Don't. Oh, don't? Sirius demands incredulously, his mouth curling into something that's half mirthless smile and half contemptuous sneer. His eyes are dark with alcohol and tiredness and anger. You stupid... You don't know what you're talking about, and anything that comes with this seal on it, he jabs a finger scornfully at the silver wax seal, goes in the fire at minute 1, and even that only rarely takes care of the problem. Get off my arm. It could be something important, Remus attempts helplessly. You don't know what's in it. Well, you can throw it away after you've opened it, can't you? Sirius gives him an incredulous look, as if he understands absolutely nothing about the way the universe works. Are you joking? He snaps. No, Remus says. Look, if you want, I'll open it. Don't, Sirius snaps, exerting sudden force and flinging Remus off him. Just let go of me, Remus. Don't. Remus worries at his lower lip, stumbling backwards and sitting down hard. He remembers this Sirius. First-year Sirius. Wild and unpredictable and nearly vibrating with anger, livid at the smallest things, easily sparked to unexpected rages, dark in the eyes and tense in the mouth. Even when he was happy, this Sirius lurked beneath his laughter, ready to be unleashed at the slightest provocation. Remus has never met Sirius's family, beyond Slytherin cousins, brothers and sisters in the halls of Hogwarts. But he gets the feeling, deep and hard in his center, that he hates him. It's an animal reaction, going for the throat. Sometimes he dreams about it. Faceless, porcelain-pale parents before him, and instinct, before he can force it down, barreling against them, ripping belly from belly, and spilling blood all over a white floor. Remus shakes his head, passing a hand over his eyes. He begins. Shut up, Sirius says harshly. You're so... God, Merlin, bugger, you're so ignorant. Look, I'll show you why I don't open it. He sinks his thumb into the crinkled parchment and rips it forward. The ball catches on the jagged edge of the letter within and rips, blossoming red over the yellow paper. Paper cuts? Remus attempts. Sirius's eyes flick up to his, black and furious and silent. Remus looks away, but listens to the crackle of paper being unfolded, ripped open. Well, this is charming, Sirius says derisively. Cordial greetings, etc., 18th birthday, would have become the man of the Black family if not for your disinheritance. God, she's such a cunt. Such a fucking man of the Black family. As if I wanted to. Those fucking... Oh, but it goes on. Fantastic. Unfortunate death of your Uncle Alfred when you were 14. Thanks, Mum, I'd forgotten. Whether or not I agree with Alfred's decisions, it is my unpleasant duty to inform you. You may have not been aware. Oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that such a fucking favor she's done me? Those fucking... I hate them, Moony. I wish... God. He moves so fast it's a blur, arm flinging out in front of him, hurling the letter into the flames, which roar up to consume it. The raven shakes out its wings in the rafters. I don't want their fucking money. He snaps at it, breathing heavily. How much? Remus asks quietly. Sirius rounds on him, and he cringes. How much? Sirius snarls. How bloody much? That's all you can think about. How much? Do you want me to give it to you? It's yours. I don't want it. Give it to your bloody parents. You can go to Devon for the entire stupid summer. I said how much because I don't know what else to say, Remus murmurs. Get out of here, Sirius yells. And it's a moment before Remus realizes Sirius isn't talking to him. The raven caws down at him, angry, reprimanding. Sirius shakes his arms up at it futilely, then grabs for his wand. Out! Out! Go back and scratch their eyes out! At last the raven takes flight, circling once, twice, 3 times around the room so that shivers creep down Remus's spine, and then streaks out the half-open window, disappearing against the bruised sky. Sirius, Remus says, stupidly trying to reason with him. Perhaps you ought to... You don't know anything. Sirius rounds on him again, the air around him brittle. Perhaps you ought to shut up. You're acting like a child, Remus bites out, trying to shock him out of it, which usually works. Instead, Sirius suddenly flings his arms down and snaps. You know what, Moony? Every time anyone does anything to stir up your fucking composure, you treat them like they're 2. Have you ever noticed that? I don't want to hear your stupid lecture about dealing with it. I don't want to hear your stupid, mature voice. And I don't need you to tell me I'm the problem here, because for once in my entire stupid life, I'm not. And frankly, if that is what you think, then you can sod off and leave me alone, because I don't need another person telling me what a shit I am, especially not you. You're one to talk about acting like a kid. Jesus, you can talk all you want about how you're 40 years old to cover it up, and you can give lectures and books and wear patchy jumpers, but I'm not sure you actually know a goddamn thing about being a grown-up. He totters unsteadily upright, passing a shaking hand over his face. I'm going to bed. I'll come down and get the presents in the morning. Serious, Remus attempts. I didn't mean... Listen, Sirius says wearily. Whatever. I don't care. I had a great party until now, all right? Thanks for not coming. Good night. Remus stares after him as he storms up the steps and wonders at how James and Peter can sleep through anything. He presses his palms together and watches his hands for a while, and then goes to gather Sirius's presents into a pile. The fire is calming down again, spitting green ink up into the sharp flashes of emerald fire earlier. Remus stares at the fire for a while, and then fishes out the charred, twisted remains of the letter with a poker. Oh, God, Remus says. It's a lot of money. Remus can't sleep. Unlike his friends, who can sleep on any surface and despite any noise. Diadems drop and dodges surrender, Remus thinks wryly. He upsets easily and overanalyzes situations and worries far too much over this and that. Replaying the situation in his head, he realizes how garbled it is. Like most situations where anger is involved, the result is a definite inability to express oneself that will, at some point, be humorous. Not now. It's 6 o'clock, and the sun is close to casting pale dawn light over everything, when Remus finally gives up on sleep and heads off to the bathroom to fling cold water on his face and brush his teeth, because his mouth smells and feels like something his mother sweeps out from under the bed, all fuzzy and gray. The hall is quiet and still, torchlight flickering dimly to light his way, and all the paintings sleeping, one or two of them letting out great huffs of air. An old man with a frizzy white beard lets out a snore so loud Remus thinks a cannon has gone off and pirates are attacking. It takes a full minute for his heart to calm down. He likes, surprisingly, the way Hogwarts is at night. Empty but full, quiet but peaceful. Everyone is sleeping except for him, which makes him feel secretive and delighted with the sound of his own footsteps echoing over stone. Besides, the bathroom will be all his. No half-naked boys flying about, all elbows and knees, and someone else's soap up his nose. Except the bathroom isn't empty. Remus says. A man with a pointy, kind face and enormous spectacles is washing his hands, back to Remus, face reflected over his shoulder in the mirror. He startles, jumping backwards and pulling his wand. Eek! Remus chokes out, and is immediately glad no one is around to save him. This way, no one is around to share the knowledge that he just went eek. No one goes eek anymore. No one has ever gone eek. Eek, says the man. What in the world? So sorry, Remus says quickly. I was just going to wash my face and... I'm sorry, are you a new professor? No, not at all, the man says hurriedly, smoothing back the few remaining strands of his hair. Not really. Not a professor here, naturally. Something of an independent inquirer paying a visit. Do you know, when I attended this school, students weren't allowed out of their dormitories after midnight. Can you imagine how unenlightened times were? I say. He has a brief, nervous laugh, which sounds more like words than laughter, as if he has consciously said, ha ha ha, which is unnerving. Oh, 7th years are now, Remus says. Fenwick, the man says automatically, jabbing out a hand. Benji Fenwick, at your service. Strange way to meet in a washroom. At least you know my hands are clean. Just, paying a visit, as I say. Nothing to worry about. I say, you don't know how to get to the headmaster's office, do you? I was in Ravenclaw, and I've never been much good with those moving staircases, and, do you know, I've misplaced myself. Remus finds him shaking a cool, still slightly wet hand, his arm being flailed eagerly up and down. He waits until Mr. Fenwick has released him to respond, feeling strangely breathless and confused. He says, I can take you if you'd like. Your hands are wet. You might want to dry them first. I'm sorry, that wasn't very friendly. I haven't slept yet. He repeats, I'd be glad to, he says finally. Pleased to meet you. I'm Remus Lupin. A hero, Benji says. A hero, a hero. Lupin, eh? A hero, in your debt, naturally. Oh, right. Hand towels. He dries himself off, polishes one side of his enormous round spectacles on his sleeve, and then blinks, owlish pale eyes in Remus's direction. Ravenclaw, are you? Or no, Gryffindor, I think. You've that air about you. Remus, already forgetting why it was he came to the bathroom in the first place, steps out into the hallway, holding the door politely open. Well, Gryffindor. Yes. You've that air about you, Benji repeats distractedly. Yes, you do. Though I thought at first... Do you play chess? Remus says. Sometimes. You're very good, I think, Benji muses aloud. You've that air about you as well. Remus tries very hard not to stare. It's not that far, he murmurs at a loss. Dumbledore's office. You got very close. It's the stairs, Benji mourns. They keep moving. Like they have to plan of a place in my mind. And, only sometimes the staircase leads up and sometimes down, and I never know which way I've gone this time. Ha! I'm sure you're much more competent than that. It's all about remembering they want to trick you. Remus doesn't say he's never had trouble after the first day, when he found himself somewhere off limits, and Sirius thought it was on purpose, and told him, jolly good job, and perhaps you can take the bed next to mine, Lupin. Remus doesn't say anything at all. They do want to trick you. Must make a note, Benji adds, half to himself, and then says breathlessly, Well, jolly good to meet you, Lupin. We must have a game of chess sometime, eh? If I'm back in the country, shall we? And thanks ever so for the directions. Good night now. And he ducks out the door and is swallowed by the darkness of the hallway. I didn't give you directions, Remus calls after him, concerned. It's all right, ha! Just needed the encouragement, really. Toodle-pip. The voice fades into nothing around the corner. Gone. Madness, Remus says wonderingly, staring into the empty hallway. Madness. Sirius is still awake when Remus creeps back up into the dormitory, arms full of presents. There is a stale, frozen atmosphere around his bed that means he's still awake, staring at the canopy or carving rude words into the bedpost. Remus tries to be as quiet as possible, depositing the gifts in a pile beside the bed. That book, left unattended, would definitely be stolen. But it's no use. From behind the curtains comes a deliberate, signaling cough, as if challenging Remus to say anything. Remus gives the canopy a glare that softens almost instantly. Sitting down on the edge of his own bed, he knows, in this second, that he will forgive Sirius anything, just as he will forgive any of his friends anything. He cannot imagine a circumstance in which he won't be able to, knowing them as he does, trusting them so. He can even forgive Sirius kissing him. The wealth of confusion that followed, the questions that nag him still and which he cannot answer, and the way Sirius pretends to simply shrug it off, the way Sirius mentions kissing James as if it's the same, the way Sirius acts determinedly as if nothing's happened while Remus is struggling so hard to do the same. Remus doesn't mind it. He's too tired to mind it, too fond, too grateful. I'm sorry, he says. Happy birthday. Sirius's bed creaks. Remus holds his breath. Good, because I'm still pretty sure that was totally your fault, Sirius mutters finally, poking his head out from behind the red and gold brocade. Anyway, I'm no good at apologizing. Remus smiles faintly. I know. That's why I did it. He licks his lips and puts everything behind him. It's what he's best at. The strangest thing just happened to me, do you know?
Part 17 and a half. One page of an essay. Remus J. Lupin, December 2nd, 1973. Care of Magical Creatures, Assignment Number 3, Werewolves. The Werewolf, classified by the Ministry of Magic, XXXXX, footnote 1. One of the hardest beasts to classify, the werewolf is subject to much fear and speculation worldwide. How and why lycanthropy began is a mystery of the beast that may never be solved. It is true that one can only become a werewolf when bitten. Theories on the origins of lycanthropy can be found in such popular publications as Man and Myth by Aloysius, 2nd century AD, as well as more recent texts such as Gamander's bestseller, Man and Myth Redefined. However, one thing about the nature of the werewolf is clear. Despite the duality of man and beast, the werewolf is a dangerous creature. Perhaps not all month, but during the full moon, there is no humanity in it. Thus, the Ministry of Magic, after much debate, has classified the werewolf as beast, footnote 2, and has rightfully labeled it as one of the most dangerous dark beasts the world over. Currently, there is no cure for the disease, which has had only recently been defined in this manner. Earlier, before the 18th century AD, there was no distinction between the werewolf as a man and the werewolf in its full throes of transformation. Some of this remains to this day, for the werewolf is a deadly creature without any human instinct at all. Footnote 1. Found in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, First Editions, Commander. Footnote 2. A History of the Ministry's Conundrums.